Fire destroys everything. It burns houses, it consumes objects. It erases even the traces people leave behind. That is why, after a fire, people look at what remains: collapsed walls, charred wood, melted metal, and the moments that disappeared forever. But on Christmas Eve in 1945, a fire in West Virginia, USA, was different. That fire did not burn everything. No. To be more precise, it failed to burn what it should have. 5 children disappeared. They were not burned. They were not found. They were never confirmed. They simply vanished. The flames swallowed the house, but there was no trace of the children anywhere. And from that night on, time stopped for one family. Some people said it was an accident, a tragic fire, a sad but finished story. But the family did not believe that, because that night too many things were wrong. December 24th, 1945, near Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sodder family home was settling into Christmas Eve. The father of the house was George Sodder, an Italian immigrant who had built his life from nothing. His wife was Jenny Sodder, and together they had several children. That night seemed no different from any other. The children stayed up late. The parents went to bed first. The house still carried the energy of an unfinished day. Laughter, footsteps, that restless, excited air of a late night. The house was alive. It was warm. It was full of family. And that is why no one knew that just a few hours later, that same warm house would become the center of a mystery that would haunt them forever. It was ordinary, too ordinary to feel dangerous. But tragedies often begin that way, on nights that feel completely normal. But the strangeness of that night may have begun long before it. George Sodder was an Italian immigrant, and he openly criticized Benito Mussolini, the dictator of Italy at the time. He never hid it. He never held back. And that may have been the problem. Months before the fire, a man approached George and left him with a message. It was not just anger. It was not just an insult. It sounded like a curse. Your house will go up in flames, and your children will disappear. You will pay for what you have said about Mussolini. The words were too direct, too specific, but George dismissed it. There are strange people everywhere, and angry people say strange things. That is what he thought. But after that night, after everything happened, those words no longer sounded like nothing. They sounded like a warning. And then, on Christmas Eve night, the phone rang. Jenny answered. But the voice on the line was a stranger, a woman. She was asking for someone who did not live there. Nothing matched. The name, the reason, the conversation itself. And in the background there was laughter, multiple voices, unfamiliar, unexplainable. Jenny felt something was off, but in the end she dismissed it. Just a wrong number. But looking back, the timing was too precise. As if someone was watching the clock. As if someone knew exactly what was happening inside that house. Around 1 a.m., Jenny suddenly wakes up. Something feels wrong. Something is not right. The air inside the house feels different. It was not a simple noise that woke her. It was a smell. Something burning. Something unnatural. A smell that did not belong in a normal night. And then she remembers something else. A sound. A heavy impact on the roof. A dull, loud thud. And then something rolling. At the time, she did not think much of it. Strange noises happen at night. And on Christmas Eve, the house had been restless anyway. But after the fire started, that sound meant something else entirely. Later, one of the children gave a similar account. They said they saw something like a ball of fire fall onto the roof. That detail led people to consider something unsettling. What if this was not a natural house fire? What if someone had thrown something onto the house? The fire spread too fast, too precisely. It climbed the walls, it swallowed the ceiling, it blocked the staircase. The speed was unnatural. It did not feel like an accident. It felt like something had a target. As the fire spread, George rushed to wake the children. He called their names, he knocked on doors, he pushed them outside, he counted them. But not all of them came out. 5 children were still upstairs, still inside. He tried to go back in, but the heat was impossible. No human could step through that fire. Still, he tried. Any father would. But the flames were too fast, too strong. So he looked for another way. A ladder. There was always a ladder by the house, always in the same place. But that night it was gone. So he turned to his trucks. He tried to climb up using them, but both trucks would not start. Both of them, at the same time. Then the phone. He needed to call for help, but the line was dead. Later, they found something worse. The line had not burned. It had been cut. The ladder was gone. The trucks were dead. The phone line was severed. Every possible way to save those children was gone, only that night. Only at that moment. This was not just bad luck. It was too precise, too controlled, too deliberate. George never reached them, and from that moment on, this was no longer just a fire. It became a night that could not be explained. The fire consumed everything. Walls, furniture, the staircase. Every trace of ordinary life in that house was gone, and people waited for one thing, the remains of the children. But there were none. Nothing. Not a bone fragment, not a tooth, not even the smallest trace that should have remained. In fires like that, something always remains. Something survives. But in that house, there was nothing. This was not just extensive burning. It looked like something had been removed. 5 children in the same space, gone without a trace. Jenny could not accept that, so she tested it herself. She took animal bones and placed them in fire for hours, but they did not disappear. They remained. The shape stayed. And she asked, if even these bones remain, then why is there not a single trace of my children? That was the moment her doubt became certainty. This was not something that burned away. It felt like something was never there to begin with. And from the beginning, the parents refused to accept the conclusion. The investigation ended too quickly. Authorities closed the case. House fire. Children perished. Case closed. But the conclusion was too fast. Too many questions were ignored. The fire started around 1 a.m. But the fire department did not arrive until after 8 a.m. The station was not far away. And yet, the response was unbelievably late. Later, the fire chief explained it. Not enough staff. Christmas night, delayed communication. But the explanation only made things worse. Because that night, everything was delayed. Everything was blocked. And then something even more disturbing was discovered. Authorities claimed they had found bone fragments at the scene, possibly the children's remains. But that was not true. It was not bone. It was a cow's liver, unburned, placed there. Someone had put it there to make it look like the children had died. This was not a mistake. It felt deliberate, like someone wanted people to believe a specific conclusion. And from that point on, a possibility began to take shape. This might not have been a simple fire. Someone may have controlled how this story ended. And from that moment, this case no longer looked like an accident. It began to look like something staged. Even after the fire, the night never ended for the Sodder family. In fact, that night only began again. After the flames were gone, George and Jenny started to remember, piece by piece. Moments that did not seem strange before began to stand out. The phone call, the sound on the roof, the missing ladder, the trucks that would not start, the cut phone line, the delayed fire response, and the remains that never existed. All of it happened on the same night, in the same house. One by one, they might seem like coincidences, but together they formed something else. It felt like someone already knew how that night would unfold, like someone had prepared everything, as if every way out had been considered before anything even began. For the Sodder family, this was no longer a house fire. It was a night filled with intention. As time passed, new stories began to surface, stories that refused to let the case end. People claimed they had seen the children after the fire. One witness said they saw children inside a passing car near the house that night, not in the flames, but in a vehicle. Another claimed they saw children matching the Sodder family days later, far from the scene. They were with unfamiliar adults, and something felt wrong. A restaurant worker also came forward. They remembered a group of children with several adults. The children were quiet, too quiet, and they seemed afraid. None of these stories were confirmed. They were memories, unproven accounts. But the problem was, they did not stop. More stories appeared, similar details, the same unsettling feeling. Was it all just coincidence? Or did those children not die in the fire? Were they taken somewhere else? That question never left the family. It only grew, but the world moves in a familiar way. When something is difficult to explain, people choose the easiest answer. It was a fire, an accident, a tragic ending. That is what people said. That is what authorities said. Even without answers, the conclusion seemed already decided, and those who questioned it were seen as unreasonable. Parents who believed their children lived. A family chasing witnesses, posting ads, asking strangers, showing photos. Some called them pitiful. Others said it was time to move on. But for George and Jenny, this was not a conspiracy. It was hope. And without that hope, there was only unbearable pain. Why was there no trace? Why were all escape routes blocked? Why was the case closed so quickly? Why was a cow's liver placed as evidence? No one answered, so they could not let it go. Not because they refused, but because they could not. After that night, George and Jenny lived with those questions for the rest of their lives. They never accepted that their children were dead. They never let go of the possibility that they might return. They waited. But they did not just wait. They searched. They placed ads. They contacted people. They followed every lead. If someone claimed to have seen something, they listened. As time passed, as others forgot, they held on tighter. Because this was not just a case. These were their children, names, faces, voices that lived in their memory every single day. For a parent, time passing does not mean distance. It means everything becomes clearer. The moment they could not reach them, the stairs they could not climb, the path that never opened. That night never left them. Years later, the Sodder family put up a large billboard near the site of their home. On it were the faces and names of the 5 missing children, and a question. Are they really dead? Has anyone seen them? What happened that night? It was not just a sign. It was a message, a refusal to give up, a question that time could not erase. Through rain, through wind, through changing seasons it remained, like the family's time, frozen, standing in front of a question that never disappeared. It was not an advertisement. It was a signal, a final call for help, a door that was never closed. Then one day Jenny received a photograph. No name, no sender, just a picture. In it was a young man, and on the back there was a short message. A message suggesting he might be one of the missing children. No one ever confirmed it. No one knew who sent it or why, but the photograph did something important. It reminded them this story was not over, and maybe someone somewhere still knew the truth. Jenny held on to that photo until the very end. She believed it could be her child. That belief kept her alive, and at the same time kept her standing at that unanswered door. Time passed. Even after the parents were gone, the story did not end. The youngest daughter, Sylvia, held on to that belief. For her entire life, she believed her brothers and sisters did not die that night. What her parents carried did not disappear. It was passed on to her. She was not just remembering, she was holding the question itself. And in 2021, when Sylvia passed away, that belief never left her. For the Sodder family, Christmas was never warm again. For others, it is a time of light music and family. But for them, it was always a door back to that night. The burning house, the missing children, the question that never closed. Until her final moment, their Christmas remained an unfinished night. On Christmas Eve, a house caught fire, and inside that fire, 5 children disappeared. They were not burned, they were not found, they were never confirmed. People said it was an accident, that it was over. But that night, too many things did not make sense. The threat about criticizing Mussolini, the impact on the roof just before the fire, the cut phone line, the missing ladder, the trucks that would not start, the fire department arriving only in the morning, and the remains that were never real, a cow's liver placed as evidence. This was too much to be called a coincidence. Maybe those children did not die in that house. Someone took them. Maybe what disappeared that night was not just the children, but the truth someone wanted to hide. And the most painful possibility is this. If those children were alive, how long did they wait to come home? And how long did their parents wait for that door to open again? People say fire destroys everything. But that night, the fire failed to destroy the truth. That is why this story never ended. And even in 2021, when Sylvia passed away, the Sodder family's Christmas was never warm again. So, what disappeared that night? 5 children? Or the truth that still remains somewhere? Or did someone already know what really happened? And even now that truth may still exist in someone's memory.
If this story left you wondering, the next one is waiting for you. Subscribe and stay with us.